All right. Well, judging by how long that game seemed to drag on for, I am very glad that we are at least starting this podcast on Saturday. Um, we were maybe in a little bit of danger of that based on the flow of everything and this game being just tailor made for the late SEC network window. We got true SEC after dark vibes in this one. It was weird. It was kind of gnarly. But look, there were a bunch of big plays made, more of them by Mizzou, and that is why they came away with a 22-point win over Mississippi State tonight on senior night. Welcome into the Knee Jerk Reactions. Thanks for joining us live on YouTube and on Facebook. And if you're listening back on the podcast, thanks for tuning in there as well. Or if you're watching this back on our YouTube channel, do us a favor. Subscribe if you don't already, as we'll give you exclusive content like this, as well as all of our big shows that we'll have weekday afternoons from 4 to 6. Be sure to catch all of that. But for these next few moments, we'll be talking about Mizzou's 49-27 victory over Mississippi State to get to 7-3 overall, 3-3 in the SEC, finishing out the home schedule with a win. They went 6-2 in their home games this year and still have 10 wins as a possibility. If they can go on the road and win a couple of games, won't be easy, certainly next week, which we will talk about, and then win their bowl game, then they can put together 3 consecutive 10-win seasons. Never been done at Mizzou. The fact that that's still alive is meaningful, and it was meaningful to get this one tonight for the seniors so they could be carried off the field with their rock and ultimately send off their final game at Faroe Field on a high note. So all that matters, the emotions of it, everything that gets put into it, not just in this game, but throughout the entire week. You heard a lot of the players talking about what that meant to them when they prepared for it. And look, it is meaningful. And it's kind of a boost that gives you that chance to continue on for the next couple of games. See if you can pull an upset next week, and then another rivalry coming up after that. So this game, look, it's a fast start by Mizzou. There were a few nervy moments in the second quarter where you kind of wondered if Mizzou was going to be able to hang on for a halftime lead. But sure enough, the defense did exactly what was required to force Mississippi State in some tough situations. Of course, Mississippi State made a whole lot of miscues in this game, and Mizzou just went ahead and benefited from it. Said, yes, thank you for doing that. We'll take that. Thank you very much. And Ahmad Hardy had an amazing game that everyone in the press box just had the reaction of, are you kidding me? Again? Just incredible night all around from him. Several other guys really stepping up, certainly on the defense, which we will talk about here in a bit. Not everything was great. We'll talk about some of the things that still need to be cleaned up, still need to progress when it comes to this game. But you tell us what you thought of it. Again, you can leave a comment below on YouTube and on Facebook right now. Tell us your thoughts about this win for Mizzou as they get to 7-3 overall and 3-3 in the SEC. I'll go through my 5 takeaways as per usual. And again, give us yours as we roll along. But we have to start with the obvious, and that was Ahmad Hardy running up and down on this Mississippi State defense. Tailor-made matchup for him. Mississippi State allows the 118th most yards per game on the ground in FBS. This is how you gash them if you're putting up points against them. You run the football, and that's what Mizzou does best. And they got back to that in this game, and they didn't go away from it. Ahmad Hardy was the guy that was working tonight, and they very much got as much out of that source of offense as they possibly could. And then some, when they basically tried to get him 300 yards towards the end of the game, which he did with his last run of 19 yards, finishes with 25 carries, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's 12 yards a carry for folks who can do that math. And he becomes just the second Tiger ever to surpass 300 yards rushing in a game. Devin West was the other one back in either 97 or 98. He had 319. I was almost thinking, were they going to try and get him to break off that record after they got the first down with less than 2 minutes to go? That would have been a little over the top, but 300 yards still very meaningful. Most he's had in a college game, obviously. Second time this year that he surpassed 200. He got 250 against Lafayette earlier in the year. But this was clearly a game where you just had to keep going to him. Not much else was working. We'll get to Matt Zowers. We'll get to the passing game as a whole. It's still not what you're wanting, at least, if you want to have a well-balanced offense at the moment. It was enough to win this game, obviously. And Zowers didn't play bad. We'll get to him. But focusing just, again, on Hardy, you don't go away from what's working, right? And Hardy very clearly could cut back against this defense, find the opening to break off the big run, and Mississippi State had no match for it. They just had no adjustment to it. I mean, it's hard to adjust to in the first place, but I mean, runs of 34, 22, a 10-yard rushing touchdown, which was his first one, and that's where he broke something like 3 or 4 tackles, thought he was going to be stopped on forward progress at the 5, but they pops out and he scores. Yeah, a 13-yard run, 11-yard run, and then the 72-yard and 43-yard touchdown runs for Hardy. We mentioned the 19-yarder at the very end that got him to 300 yards. I mean, just it's amazing the ability he has to not only break off the tackles, but I was more impressed by his cutback ability to go against the grain. Immediately knew, hey, the way this play is designed, yeah, I need to follow these blocks, but man, there's a whole lot of space on this right side. Let's just go find that. And sure enough, he made that decision, had excellent vision in this game, and along with his ability to stay on his feet after first, second, third contact, all of that paired together just made for an excellent night for him. And look, I was critical of him last game. I certainly will own up to that. I don't take back what I said in the last game. I think Mizzou did the exact same thing they did in this game. They went with the hot hand last week, and the hot hand was Jamal Roberts, and they decided to go with him a little bit more, and the carries were a little more even there because Roberts seemed to be running with a little more consistency, and so they kept with him. But here they stuck with Hardy, and Hardy, when he gets a chance to keep getting the rock as the hot hand, that's what can happen. Like, there's been no doubt that he's the best running back on the team, and he again showed that with how he ran in this game. And again, just it was exactly what Mizzou offense needed to do. It could have been either Hardy or Roberts running it. Roberts didn't run bad in this game. 9 carries, 45 yards. That's 5 yards a carry. That's not bad. You didn't get 21 of those on just 1 carry, so if you take that away, maybe not as efficient. But Mizzou's running attack needed to be the driving force, and it clearly was. And Hardy was the guy that made it happen. And it's one of those games that you're just going to think back on and think, man, I was in the building when Hardy touched 300 yards, something that only one other Mizzou Tiger has done in history. Like, those are things that you will remember when you look back at this game and you talk about what really was the main thing to take away from it. It's just the fact that there was one guy on the field that would not be stopped. That none of the 50 to 60 players that Mississippi State traveled to the game was going to be able to lock in on this guy. He just was the straw that stirred the drink for Mizzou's offense all night long, and then some. And so Mizzou kept going to it, and he got to 300 yards. Mizzou as a team had an excellent night rushing. Give a lot of credit to the offensive line, too. They opened up those holes. They opened up the outside zone that started things for Hardy when he broke off for believe 30-plus yards on the very first run. Like, that doesn't happen without, guys back into the game. Certainly Brett Norfleet being back out there with his run blocking ability was, I think, key in this game. I think they missed not only his pass catching, but also his run blocking against A&M last week. So to have all of that come together that way, it's special. And we'll see what Artie's got in store for the next few games. I don't quite know where the season total is for him now, but I assume it has now surpassed 1,300. Obviously, the record from Cody Schrader 2 years ago was, I believe, around 1,600-ish after he got that in the Cotton Bowl. So that could be on the table now for a Mizzou running back to break the single-season rushing record for the third time in 5 seasons. That'd be pretty impressive. Again, I don't know if it'll actually happen. He's going to have 100-plus yard games for the next 3 for Mizzou. Going to be hard to do that against Oklahoma. They are a lot better against the run than Mississippi State is. But look, this is the night for Ahmad Hardy to take a bow, take another one, and blow a kiss to the crowd, everything like that. He deserves all the flowers tonight for how he was able to pace Mizzou's offense to a 49-point showing. But, of course, not all of it was them that got those 49 points. 14 of those came from the defense, which really, coming into this game, I thought this was where Mizzou was actually going to win it, was just killing the will from Mississippi State offensively after getting out to a fast start, which Mizzou did that. Mississippi State kind of climbed back in, or at least had an opening to do so after they scored their first touchdown, cut it to 14-10. And then you maybe saw some of the openings for them to potentially climb back into the game. But every time that the defense needed to make a play, they did it. We'll talk about the penalties here in a bit, but just the way that several guys on this defense were able to fly around and wreak havoc on the backfield for Mississippi State when they were changing out quarterbacks. I mean, Khalil Jacobs was excellent. He was everywhere. Chris McClellan with a sack and a half tackle for loss. Look, the Mizzou lost. They didn't have Langdon Kitchen for this game. He was out with injury, and then they lost Nate Johnson very early in the game to targeting, so they're a little more thin on the defensive end spot. I thought Dayton Hopkins, the true freshman, stepped up and was excellent in this one. So you see guys like that. You see guys like Darius Smith, who had a couple of sacks, and I think it's really notable about how they have used him this year, because I'm sure the original plan was for him to line up at a DN spot, be a pass rusher, potentially be one of their most explosive ones, most energetic pass rushers in the end on the defensive end spot as a real respite for guys like Damon Wilson and Zion Young. But they've kind of shifted his starting point a little bit. He's kind of moved back to the linebacker spot, and I just loved how they've schemed him around on third downs. And it happened a couple of times in this game where Mizzou lines up in an odd front. They've got Young and Wilson at the ends. They've got McClellan as the nose, and then Khalil Jacobs kind of creeps up to join the rush right before the snap, but then Smith is kind of roaming in the middle, and he's waiting for his spot to come in and blitz. And I thought he did it perfectly a couple of times on some delayed rushes, not allowing Chapin to leak out and get past the pocket and potentially get a first down with his legs. I thought Smith was excellent in finding the ways to cut that down, sweep away those scramble ability for one Blake Chapin. And just the way that Mizzou's coaching staff has been able to utilize him in that, I think deserves a whole lot of credit. So whoever it is, Corey Batoon, Brian Early, linebackers coach, Devin Nickerson, I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name, but either way, they've done an excellent job with putting guys in the right position at the right time. And certainly that was the case for a couple of guys in the secondary. I mean, Toriano Pride, not only with that big fumble recovery on the botched snap on the field goal attempt that Mississippi State had, he picks it up and he returns it to like the 25, 20-yard line, and that sets up a Mizzou touchdown. But then he gets the pick six where somehow the ball just never hits the ground. When it came off the receiver's hands, it came off of the other DB that was covering on that play. I can't remember who it was, but Pride wasn't even the guy covering the receiver, but he just comes on over, has the awareness to at least help out in that situation, pick up the loose ball in midair, and take it in untouched for a touchdown. Then Marvin Burks also with a pick six on a spot where in a lot of situations maybe he asked for him to bat it down, but he wanted to get the interception. And sure enough, he had a lane to score himself. I just think that those plays right there, first of all, I think for the most part, iced this game. Both coming in the second half, Mississippi State kind of started to get a little bit of the momentum after a touchdown themselves, but then they completely are unable to recover from those two defensive scores that Mizzou put up. But look, overall on the game, you also have to be really impressed with what Mizzou put together. Even though there were some leaky moments, they still hold Mississippi State to 7 of 18 on third down, 0 of 3 on fourth down. They hold them. Mississippi State ran 35 more plays than Mizzou did, but only 3.8 yards per play. Mizzou had 8 yards per play as a comparison on offense, just 2.1 yards per rush. You take the sacks out of it, it's 3 yards a rush. That's still minuscule. I mean, Mizzou's defense is clearly the better unit this year, and they showed it once again, because even when they get depleted, they had 2 guys lost due to targeting in this game, Nate Johnson and Josiah Trotter, and they're still able to get a bunch of havoc on whoever was at quarterback, whether it was Chapin or Taylor, and they're able to hold them on third down, hold them on fourth down in a lot of situations. I mean, the spot where they're trying to prevent Mississippi State from scoring from inside the 10, and there was just penalty after penalty creating auto first downs back and forth for Mississippi State, and they got about 7 or 8 different chances to punch it in, but Mizzou just wouldn't let it happen. And then on that field goal attempt, that was the one that came off the holder's foot, and Pride picked it up and returned it a long way. That just was a huge swing that Mizzou needed, certainly to keep control before the half, and then they were able to cash in on that with, I believe that was Hardy's touchdown, that his first one of the night, that they used after that scoop and almost score. So whether the defense was dominating, or maybe there were times where they were letting up a little too much than they would have liked, either way, they were setting the tone in this game. Mississippi State had a few chances where they thought they could maybe climb back in, get within a score. But then Mizzou's defense was the unit that dictated how the rest of the game was going to go. And some big plays were able to swing it back in their favor. And ultimately, this is why Mizzou was able to finish it. Ahmad Hardy, I mean, you could honestly say that maybe it was Ahmad Hardy who was finishing the game. He was kind of the closer type, but he was running hard and fast pretty much all game long. I think Mizzou's defense was how they ultimately got the result that they got. And you can maybe see the 27 points that Mississippi State put up and think, it's a little too much. No, Mississippi State's a team that puts up a lot of points. Their offense has been very good this year against SEC competition. Just haven't been able to finish the job in a lot of their games. So I think Mizzou getting what it did on defense against this team was crucial to not only closing this out, but also I think just getting started the way that they wanted to, finishing the half the way that they wanted to. And that way Mississippi State wasn't the team getting the momentum as the team was headed into the locker room. So that, I think, overall, you love what the defense gave you in this game, save for the penalties, which obviously have to be cleaned up. And we'll see what it looks like over the last couple of games for this team. But, man, it just seemed, especially early on in this one, the defensive penalties that allowed Mississippi State to get their first 10 points of the game in the first quarter. I mean, if you take away a face mask that created a first down on a third down play where there was an incompletion or a sack rather, a holding penalty that extended a drive inside the 10, and that was a third down play as well that put Mississippi State in position to score. In between, there was the first targeting penalty, Nate Johnson, with a late hit on the quarterback. It was going to be roughing the passer anyway. So even if it wasn't targeting, Mizzou still letting up those 15 yards and getting Mississippi State into field goal range. It just seemed that the penalties came at really ill times for this group, and so you noticed them a little bit more. Unnecessary roughness, which was I didn't love the call that the officials had here. Officials were not very popular here at Faurot Field. Surprise, surprise. But I think largely, especially on the defense, the penalties, I think I don't have too much of a problem with the calls themselves. Now, what I will say is that I don't have a problem with the calls. I do have a problem with the targeting rule. And look, there has to be a change to this. I think next year, put levels on this. Do not just have one blanket targeting call for every hit that falls underneath this umbrella. Because not every hit is malicious to the point where it warrants ejecting a player from the game. It can be a 15-yard penalty. Sure. Take those hits out of the game. Don't allow players to lead with the crown of their helmet or have forcible contact to the head and neck area. You got to make sure that you're not making those types of hits. I know it's a tough thing for a defensive player to do, but it is still something that, in order for this game to be as safe as possible, not necessarily the league, but just the game itself, the powers that be, are trying to legislate it out as much as possible. That being said, these players are not trying to target most of the time. Every so often, maybe they do, but I don't think that was the case at all tonight. Certainly not the one with Trotter. Yes, by the letter of the law, he is lowering his head. He is not looking at what he is hitting. He hits Chapin's helmet with the crown of his own helmet. And yeah, by the letter of the law, that's targeting. It wasn't malicious. Both of them were kind of trying to brace themselves as Chapin was sliding late. And so I would love to see, look, it can still be targeting against Josiah Trotter, but it doesn't need to be an ejection, I think, in that situation. That can be a spot where you have a personal foul. In that case, it would have just created an automatic first down or whatever it is, 15 yards. Sure, you can make it a penalty, but I don't think every single one of these plays has to be an ejection for the player. And so I would love to see college football make a change to that next year and have some sort of nuance as to how we view targeting going forward. Because sure, you do need to leave some legislation in place to take players out of the game if they had a violent, unnecessary hit that checks the boxes for targeting and everything like that. Yes, absolutely. There can still be situations where that is the case and the player needs to be taken out of the game. But I think a lot of these calls are not plays that the defensive player is trying to make. They're trying their best to play their position under the rules that they've been given. And sometimes they just have their head in the wrong spot, or they're hitting the wrong target at the very last moment. You've got to leave some sort of gray area there for those hits that, yes, can be flagged and it maybe cost your team some yards or a series, whatever it might be. But let's not take players out of the game for those hits that they don't necessarily intend to make. And so I thought that was the unfortunate part for guys like Nate Johnson and Josiah Trotter in this game. Thankfully for them, both penalties occurred in the first half, so they're not going to miss any time. They'll still be ready to go against Oklahoma, you'd have to think. But, yeah, that's my rant on targeting. Back to essentially the penalties there. I thought most of the calls were fine. Like, I didn't have much of a problem with what was being called on the defense. The grounding calls that were called on Matt Zowers in the game, I did have a bit of a question about. But largely, this is still a defense that has to make sure they're not giving up freebies, especially against this team. Like, it's pretty much the only thing that Mississippi State could hang their hat on is, throwing it up and seeing if you get a penalty in the end. And sometimes it worked. And Mississippi State was able to sustain drive. The only time they were able to sustain drives, it seemed, in this game was when they were aided by a Mizzou defensive penalty. So, look, 2 games left. You know that obviously it has to be cleaned up. It'll get emphasized. Oklahoma will know how to bury you a lot more. And certainly Arkansas's offense will know how to bury you if you give up penalties defensively against them. So clean it up. 11 penalties is still too many, even though you won by 20. 8 on the defense, 3 on the offense. That's too many. So we'll see how Mizzou chooses to address that going forward. Now, look, another thing that maybe wasn't great tonight was the passing game. And clearly, Mizzou's true freshman quarterback is still looking at a lot of area for growth, it would seem right now, after 2 college starts, his first 2 of his career. Still a work in progress. 8 of 15 tonight, a little bit better completion percentage than last game. 112 yards, a little bit better yardage-wise. 2 touchdowns. Great throw to Donovan Olubade. Great catch by him, honestly. Found Josh Manning in the soft spot of his own, and then Manning breaks a whole bunch of tackles to run in for a score. But, man, the interception that Zowers had was just a bad throw. It just was 3 to 5 yards away from where the target actually was. I forget who he was searching for on that play, but it was, I believe, a 3rd down, and you got to put it on him. Like, he's at the first down sticks, and he can just fall backwards and after making that catch, and you've got the first down and you're still driving. So, look, there's still a lot to work on for this kid. I think Mizzou did a little bit better job helping him out in this game, creating some simpler throws for him. Didn't necessarily ask him to throw a whole lot. Game script kind of dictated that. They were ahead all game, and he didn't have to throw him back into it. But it's still a work in progress at the moment. And look, that's to be expected. Still a true freshman, still thrust into a situation where wasn't expected to be the guy. This is going to take some time. The only problem is that there's time running out in the season. And so that's the hard part, is that after the next couple of weeks, you won't get to see that progress continue on until a bowl game, which will be further in the future, and then obviously into 2026. So will we see bright spots of what Matt Zowers could be in a Mizzou uniform over these next couple of games? Will we see him make some big-time plays in crucial spots that maybe keep Mizzou in a game or allow them to take control of the game, whatever it might be? We're starting to run out of time a little bit on whether we're going to see that from Matt Zowers. Look, it's not a dire situation, obviously, on that. Mizzou's run game is, I think, good enough to pace them against most any opponent. But right now, if they go up next week against Oklahoma, they could have the ability to make Mizzou one-dimensional. They have more of an ability to stop Mizzou's run game. And so will Zowers be to step up in spots where you got to convert a few more third downs than you did in this situation. Now, look, Mizzou was good on third down. They were 5 of 10. When it comes to how they got those third downs, look, Matt Zowers found Alubade on a free play for the touchdown there. Zowers found Kevin Coleman with a really nice pass, and Coleman got some yards after the catch, of course. And the other three were on running plays with Jamal Roberts and Ahmad Hardy to convert those other third downs. Zowers still kind of struggling when it comes to the other ones. I think if I'm doing the math here correctly, he was 2 of 7 on third down plays, and one of them resulted in the grounding that was towards the end of the first half, and Mizzou had to kick a field goal in that spot. Which, hey, Oliver Robbins blasted that kick. It just came off the upright. Unfortunate for him, but that was pretty impressive range from the young freshman there. We'll see how many more chances we get to see that. And, look, I think that was a bright spot for Zowers, too. I think he operated that 2-minute drill about as well as he could. Credit to the coaching staff for also helping him out in that situation. They got him to spike with about 19 seconds to go. I think they hoped that they would have done that against Vanderbilt a few weeks ago, but alas. But I thought they did about as well as they could hope in that 2-minute drill to bleed out as much of the clock as possible, give themselves a chance at points at least. Obviously, couldn't quite get the field goal. But look, not to say that Zowers was bad in this game. He had some good moments. It's just still not all the way there. He didn't have to be all the way there tonight because he had Ahmad Hardy running for 300 yards. But in a spot where Mizzou is going to need to rely upon Zowers on the road to not win the game for him, but at least give them a play or two that gets them closer to that point. Still unsure if that's going to be the case. Look, that's, again, what the expectation should have been for a true freshman. Shouldn't heap too many expectations on that. So the fact that it's still a work in progress shouldn't be surprising. It's just this game, again, a reminder that that's what it is at this point. And so we'll see how Mizzou is able to work on that and with him going forward. Now, after 10 games, this broke up a stretch of losing 3 of your last 4. You get back in the win column. You get a win against a team that you were expected to beat, touchdown favorites, everything like that. They only had 1 SEC win. Still don't quite have that 6th win to get to bowl eligibility. You did what I think you were largely expected to do against Mississippi State, maybe a little bit more. I mean, I don't know how many people expect 300 yards from Ahmad Hardy every game. Maybe you do. I don't know. If you're a big-time Ahmad Hardy guy, which I am too, I don't predict 300 yards every game, though, and that's above the expectations, obviously. But, I mean, Mizzou largely did what it was supposed to in order to continue a stretch where they can finish strong in this season. But will it continue? And that's a big if for next week when they go down to Norman, a place where they haven't won, I believe, since the mid-'60s. So you obviously have that to go up against. And you have the fact that Oklahoma looked pretty darn good in Tuscaloosa today, and they have every bit of college football playoff hopes that you could want to have as a 2-loss team at this point in the season. So they've got everything to play for. Highly motivated to come back home and beat a regional rival to continue their bid for the CFP. That's going to be a lot to handle for Mizzou. I mean, I don't know what the spread's going to look like, but I would imagine that Mizzou is at least a touchdown underdog. I would guess it opens at 7.5 and maybe even gets bet up to around 8 or 9. We'll see. But it is a daunting task that Mizzou has ahead of them next week. Again, we talked about the run game being great tonight. Mississippi State was something like 118th in FBS in defending the run. Oklahoma came in this weekend to number 2 in the nation in defending the run. This will be a much different defensive test that Mizzou's O-line has to be ready for. Mizzou's coaching staff has to be ready for. Ultimately, Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts have to be ready for. And certainly so Matt Zollers, if the run game isn't quite what Mizzou needs it to be in that game. And they're going to have to turn to Zollers and be like, okay, what you got? Can you bring us back? It's going to be a hard thing to ask a true freshman to do. But that might happen at points next weekend in Norman. Look, today I don't know if I can predict them to win that game. It is winnable, though. Like, there is a path to victory in that, especially if your defense can play the way that it has. Like, again, take out some of those dumb penalties and play the way that you did tonight, and I think you'll give yourself a shot against John Mateer in that offense. It's all going to come down to when Mizzou has the ball. Like, there will be several times where they're maybe only down a score or maybe 2 scores and they have a chance to cut it into a one-possession game. There will be several chances that they have to do that. What do they do with those opportunities? Can they finish in the red zone? Can they stay out of 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9? Those have been some of the main issues that Mizzou's offense has had over this last stretch, even without or even with Bo Prabula in there. And so it'll be a daunting task for this offense in particular to hold its own in a hostile environment against what is definitely a playoff caliber defense. Like, that unit deserves to be in the college football playoff. The question is, will their offense continue to put them in that position as they're in right now? Like, they were 11 today, and they will be at least 8 or 7 potentially when the update comes out on Tuesday. So I think this can be, obviously this can be a signature win for Mizzou, but they're going to need their best game of the year in order to pull it off. They need A+, and they need Oklahoma, I think, to have no more than a B type game in this one. So will it happen? We shall see. If they don't make it happen, doesn't mean that this is a bad season. They can still win at Arkansas next week, make that 8-4. That's still a good year. Maybe add a bowl win to it. Look, all things considered with how this season went, I think you'll take that. And then obviously afterwards, when the SEC goes to 9 games, 8-4 will mean that you had a winning conference record. Like, let's stop bemoaning 8-4. It can be disappointing, no doubt. It's not to say that you have to be happy with it all the time, but perspective has to be kept here, and you got to keep it this year and going forward with that type of win total. So Mizzou can try and improve upon that. They can get to that 8th win if they make it happen next week in Norman, but they need by far their best effort on the season in order to make it happen, and maybe even need a little bit of help, a little bit of luck for that to happen too. By the way, I mentioned Prabula a little bit ago. He was warming up today, not in pads or anything like that, but he was out there throwing along with Zollers and the rest of the quarterbacks in basically the workout gear. I didn't watch him for a whole lot of time, but he didn't appear to be like limping or anything like that. He was throwing the football the way that I had been used to seeing him throw it. He obviously had been doubtful all week. He was doubtful up until 90 minutes before, and then they eventually said, no, he's out. Eli Drinkwitz punted on saying anything about his status going forward, said, no, that's the future. Let's just focus on what this team did tonight. And so we shall see. At the very least, it's a promising sign for his rehab. I think you could have read into that anyway with him being listed as doubtful. I don't think you expected him to play in this game at all, but the fact that they were listing him as doubtful could have at least been an indication that the healing process is working well. And look, who knows what could happen in the future? Could he come back next week? I have no clue. The little bit that I got to see him throw didn't look all that bad, though. I'm just saying. But we'll see what the injury statuses look like leading up to the Oklahoma game, and we'll be ready to read too much into it right here. So get ready for it, folks. Those are the knee-jerk reactions. Again, leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts on this game tonight as Mizzou gets the victory over Mississippi State, gets to 7 wins. Maybe that was enough to cash your ticket if you got that 6.5 in the jurisdiction of legality. If not, maybe you're waiting for one more. Well, a couple chances to get there. We shall see if that happens for you. Again, thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you don't already, if you're watching back over there. Thanks for also watching on YouTube and listening back on the podcast. We'll have more thoughts on this game on Monday at 4 o'clock on The Big Show with myself and Brendan. And so you'll be able to see that at this exact same spot on YouTube, also on Facebook. You can tune in on radio, obviously, with the free KTGR app. If you don't have that, download it. It's free. Why not? You lose nothing. So be sure to join us for that coverage as well as we talk about Mississippi State, and we look forward to what Mizzou could do in Norman coming up next Saturday at 11 a.m. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great rest of your evening, great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you soon.